See where we are? You want to go up?
Well, she's seen us. We can't very well be rude.
Comfort of Strangers is unique because it's made by people who don't do stuff like other people do. And I don't know quite why it was offered to me, but when it was, I jumped all over it. I hadn't even finished the whole script by the time I realized I was going to do this. There's been a rich tradition of British novels where educated Brits go off to exotic places and they have exotic experiences. So this falls into that tradition.
No, this one's for Jack.
Ecco la seconda.
And this is for Kathy.
Lovely.
There were two themes involved. There was Ian McEwan's theme, which is that men and women are inherently incompatible, and no amount of socialization can paper this over. And then there was Harold Pinter's theme, which was language is a tool we use not to communicate.
I think the St. Augustine is incredible. So... I don't know.
I thought that the last time.
McEwan's book is more traditional. Things happen for a reason. Harold goes into the novel and starts removing the connective cord.
Well, so what?
Nothing, I'm just...
I mean, what's the point? What's the point of saying that? Why did you say that?
I didn't mean it as an insult.
Christ.
I'm simply making an observation.
So things happen, but not for the psychological reasons that they happen in the book. But then I realized there's a third thing, a theme I had learned shooting Mishima, which is that beauty in and of itself is dangerous. In the book, I remember that Robert's apartment is actually a rather tatty affair. So I just made everything as beautiful as I could and luxurious. You make that apple have such a sheen that you cannot help yourself but to take a bite and then find your mouth full of worms.
Hello. I'm Caroline, Robert's wife.
And it was going to be done in Italy. And so I immediately thought I would be doing it with Nando Scarfiati, who had been my visual teacher on Gigolo and Cat People. But Nando was showing the first signs of AIDS, and he had to leave the Bertolucci film in Morocco, Sheltering Sky. So he recommended Gianni Quaranta. And then Dante Spinatti, who happened to live in the Veneto and had been working in the U.S., saw this as a great excuse to work out of home. And so then I had a pretty four-square team. This was a script that had been put together by Angelo Rizzoli and had been offered to John Schlesinger before me. And Schlesinger wanted Rupert, an actor who looked like a god. And then I don't know what else happened, but I think John began to feel there was no career upside in this. And so he did something else. Natasha I had worked with before, and I originally offered the Caroline role to Mary Beth, my wife, but she felt it was too kinky. So then Mary Selway, who was in London, suggested Helen, and Helen felt right. Originally, I wanted Al to play Robert, and Al wanted to do it, but he was doing Godfather 3, so I called up Francis, and Francis said, Al can't fucking do it. I've got him by contract and by the balls. I think Chris was more sinister than Al would have been. We came to Rome for rehearsals, and Walken had made the mistake of working on his Italian in New York. And he had a New York Italian accent. I said, Chris, this simply will not work. So I called up Verde Visconti, who knew everybody in Rome. And I said, Verde, I have a problem. I'm looking for a man, 30 to 40, homosexual, educated in London, with great taste. And she said, oh, you mean Adone Colonna. He was part of the Colonna family, 5 cardinals and 2 popes in the family. And so I met with him. I said, I'd like you to hang around with Christopher Walken. Just let Chris go wherever you go. Just let him hang around with you. And he said, okay. And about 3 days later, I got a call from Chris. And he said, you can let Adoni go now. And I said, oh, it didn't work out, did it? He said, no, I got him.
Slammed the door and locked it. Bye, bye, Robert, they called through the keyhole. Now, you're Big Papa.
And the mixture of what is Walken and what is Adoni, that's what makes the performance interesting.
My friends, how are you both this morning?
Terrible. We slept in the street.
Street?
It's very hard to get an untrained actor to read this kind of Pinter stuff because the language is not naturalistic. And it was very much a Harold Pinter screenplay, and I liked it a lot. My actors had some problems with it because it was very elliptical, where people don't answer the question, and sometimes they come around and answer it in another scene.
Why did you take my picture? What does it mean?
You see that barber shop? My grandfather and my father used that barber shop. And I used that barber shop.
Some of my actors wanted me to change the script. So I called up Harold and I said, you know, my actors want me to rewrite, and I don't want to rewrite. Let's try this. You come to Rome for a week and do a week of rehearsal. I'll just sit in the room, I won't say a thing. Harold's method of rehearsing consisted of reading and rereading the script, twice in the morning, twice in the afternoon, every day, and not much discussion.
It's unreadable.
I found him electrifying. He was a East Side Jewish bully, and he would go at you.
I'm trying to get through to the children. Can't you hear?
All right.
One day, Natasha said to him, now I'm in Venice with my boyfriend. My 2 children are staying with my mother. What is my relationship with their father? Is he alive? Is he dead? Are we on good terms or bad terms? And Harold said, Natasha, he talked like that. He said, I have never answered a question like that, and I'm not going to start. Read the text. And his intent was, you read it enough, you will answer that question. And whatever your answer is will be the right answer. And what was interesting, when Harold went back to London, I said, I know you all have questions, so let's go through the room and hear all your questions. And there was a long pause, and Chris said, you know, I kind of like it the way it is. And then Helen said, yeah, so do I.
You know, it's so beautiful. My heart jumped.
But I told you how you looked in that night dress, didn't I?
There was one mistake in the script that I had to address. In the book, because we had this couple making love in their room for 2 days. It wasn't in the script. There was no actual fucking. And I said, Harold, I can't say that these people are fucking for 2 straight days and not actually show them fucking. And I need you to write me a scene. I sent him that message a couple times, and I never got the scene. So then I sat down and wrote the scene. And within about 20 minutes, the facts started up, and he had rewritten my scene.
Does it feel like to be the girl? I mean the feeling of it.
When Colin says to Mary while they're fucking, what's it like to be the girl? And she says, it's like this, and turns his head and sticks her tongue down his ear. That was the change that Harold made. I'm always an advocate of narration and voiceover. I use it in virtually every script I write. And Harold had used this deceptive narration to guide this film and overlaid it. And then I overlaid it even more. So he's telling a story about his sisters bringing him cake and candy. And they say to him, Robert, this is all for you.
And Maria said, look, darling, this is all for you.
Building up this notion that Colin and Mary are a gift that has been given to him and his wife. In the run-up to making a film, you just start watching movies after movies. And you start looking for stuff to steal, just like you do when you go to museums, art shows, anywhere. Very first shot, when you're going across the ceiling, that's the opening of last year's Berry Bed. When they're getting lost, they run across a guy carrying panes of glass. Well, that's from Orphée. When Orphée goes into the underworld, that's who he runs into. And it's a little tip of the hat. This doesn't all come out of nowhere. And if you know your film history, you'll recognize that I'm working out of film traditions.
I've never told anyone this. Never. But I want to tell you.
It's my most aggressively directed film, high style. It was a phase I was going through at the time, and it started with Gigolo and Cat People, and went on to Mishima, and then went on to Comfort, something that means to impact you image by image. Let's not put anything up there that doesn't pack a punch. Comfort of Strangers has a very fluid, magical visual style, one that was always on the move, always looking for beautiful things. I first learned how to cut in camera in order to make smooth and sensuous edits. So when I deliver the footage to the editor, it comes pre-cut. It's almost like it has little dots on it. It says, cut here, cut here, cut here. Motion-to-motion cuts, which are very hard to do. You're on a dolly and you cut to a counter dolly. I could do that at that time because we had camera mode. So you had a monitor with a little tape in it, and you could shoot a scene and look at it and decide where you wanted to splice. And you would freeze it at that point and put all your actors into position exactly as they were. Then you'd hit the recorder and the camera at the same time. And then you could go back to your little tape and see how well the motion-to-motion splice worked. Every match has to hit. The actors can't remember that. You can't do that. But with this technology, I could do that.
Oh, excuse me. Would you take a photograph of us? Thank you.
We made a rule to only shoot at buildings or in buildings that had Oriental architecture, all those Eastern colors. So not to do anything Italian or Roman, all the stuff that had come from the East as a way to sort of separate it from the normal Italian, just to get out of the bit of stereotype. I had a dinner with Lena Wertmuller before I was shooting, and I said, I think I'm going to play Venice as Istanbul. And she laughed, and she said, how can you do that? I said, you play Turkish music. But then we needed a great Italian Uber theme. And it was Angelo's idea to go to Puccini and to rip him off and to have all of the luxurious overscoring, just laying this music on top of the movie like it was frosting.
Seemed quite the same after your apartment.
We had very nice clothes. Giorgio Armani had done American Gigolo, and that had really put him on the map. And since I was back in Italy, I looked him up, and they explained to me that they didn't do movies anymore because the red carpet is much more effective than movies. But because it's you and because you're in Italy, Giorgio will do this one.
All right. My father was very big man.
When Robert gives his 12-minute speech that you think is going somewhere and goes nowhere, he didn't want to pick that speech up. He said, we have to do it in one take. Now, we had one mega film that's about 11 minutes long, so we got to get it right to 11 minutes. But all the speeches were done in single takes, a lot of them.
But he loved me. I was his favorite.
The killing scene was a oneer, and it had to go the entire length of that huge apartment, and it had to change speeds as it went. It was real tricky because you had to get a huge crane into that set. And you had to set up the angle in such a way that Robert's arm blocks the throat just as the knife hits the throat, because you can't show that falseness. They had just come out with vari speed, which meant that you could change the speed of the shot and the exposure simultaneously, so that the shot would begin in slow motion. But then once the killing is executed, then it gradually goes back into regular motion until it could end up in the tippy corner. That gave me enough time to play a very romantic score. You know, it's a kind of spectacular way to show something that could have seemed quite prosaic. The beauty of the horror. The script ended in a more conventional way, which was a reunion of Mary and her children in England. And even while I was shooting it, as much as I liked being in England, I realized this is not going to happen. The way I ended it was much more Pinteresque.
We were going to get married.
And Harold realized that as soon as he saw the film. He liked the film quite a bit. And he said, I love the ending. No, I didn't come into film to make Come From Strangers, but I just thought it was a kind of magical film. I saw it a few nights ago, and again was caught in its spell. It's not that personal for me. It's not personal in the way that First Reformed is, or Affliction, or Light Sleeper. But I think it's a very unique accomplishment. I don't think I could do it again. I don't think I have the chops to make that film again. So I'm very glad I made it.